Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. So on today's video tutorial, guys, we are still going through the grade 12 mathematical literacy paper 1 that was written in June 2023. And in this video tutorial, guys, we're going to be having a look at the last question 5.2. And question 5.2, guys, is under the umbrella of finance, right? In particular, in this question, we are going to be tackling exchange rates. Okay, so before we get started with today's video tutorial, guys, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure that you click on that notification bell so that you get notified every single time I upload a new video tutorial, guys. And also, please don't forget to give these video tutorials a huge thumbs up because it really helps the channel grow and it helps the channel to reach more learners that want to better their mathematics math. Also, guys, if you really want to support the channel and you appreciate the content that I make for you guys, please consider becoming a member of the channel. The benefits of being a member is that you get to watch all these video tutorials earlier than people that are not. Okay, so you don't have to wait for the next day to watch these video tutorials. So without any further ado, guys, let's get started with today's video tutorial. So like I mentioned, guys, in today's video tutorial, we are going to be tackling question 5.2. And question 5.2 deals with exchange rates, okay? So let us get started. It says Brazil has trade relationships with a number of countries, okay? Table 5 below shows the value in billions of US dollars of the imports and exports for Brazil with 6 countries. Okay, so this table below basically shows us the value, right, in billions of imports that Brazil makes with 6 different countries and exports that Brazil makes with 6 different countries. Okay, those countries are China, the United States of America, Germany, Argentina, South Korea, and Japan. Okay, so let's basically look at this first row and try to make sense of what this row is basically telling us. This first row is telling us that when Brazil import goods from China, okay, the value of those imports is 36.74 billion US dollars. Okay, if Brazil exports to China, okay, the value of those exports is 67.79 billion US dollars. Okay, so that is how we're gonna go about analyzing this table here. Okay, it says table 6 below indicates the exchange rates on the 27th of April 2022. Okay, so let's have a look. This is the currency conversion factors. Okay, so we're given the currency on the left column and we're given the exchange rates on the right column. Okay, so if you want to basically exchange from the US dollar to the Brazilian real, okay, 1 US dollar is equal to 4.9642 Brazilian reals. Okay, 1 Brazilian real is equal to 3.2026 rands, right? And 1 euro is equal to 5.2379 Brazilian reals. Okay, so this is basically the equations that we're going to use to help us convert from one currency to the next. Okay, let's have a look at the questions. It says use table 5 and table 6 above to answer the questions that follow. Question 5.2.1 says state the country with the smallest range between the imports and the exports to Brazil. Okay, so here, right, if you don't really understand what this question is asking you, you need to basically think when we are calculating range, right? When we basically tackling our data handling, how do we calculate range? Okay, when we calculate range, guys, remember range is equal to the maximum value minus the minimum. Okay, so if you don't really understand how to basically approach this question logically, You can also just think of it mathematically, okay? How would you calculate range, okay? Range is equal to your maximum value minus your minimum, okay? So from all these values here, right, okay, let's start off with the China, right? You'll basically take the maximum value and minus the minimum value and get what is the value that you get there. That'll give you the range, okay? Here as well, for the United States, the maximum value minus the minimum value, get that. What is the value that you get, okay? For Germany, the maximum value minus the minimum value. What is that value that you get? So the values that you would get if you basically take your maximum minus your minimum would be what's the range, okay? And then after basically obtaining what those ranges are, from there you'd basically determine which one is the smallest range, okay? But then that is actually the long way of doing it, okay? Because I mean, honestly, this question is out of 2 marks, so you don't want to spend so much time basically doing maximum minus minimum for each and every value here, okay? So what other way can we basically approach this question logically, okay? So here you basically want to see, okay, from all of these values that we are given here, right, which value has the smallest difference between the imports and the exports, okay? So we can see here, right, that if you actually look at a chart, right, if you actually look here, you'll see that Japan actually has the smallest difference between the imports and the exports, okay? Because if you actually take that 4.32 and you minus it with 4.13, you will get 0.19, okay? And that 0.19 is actually the smallest range that you'll get from all these values that were given here, okay? Because if you take 67 minus 36.74, okay, the difference between these two values gives you approximately 31.05. So already you can see that, okay, this is not going to give us the smallest range, okay? Or also, when you look at 29.72 and 21.62, okay, that's not going to give us the smallest range. The 9 to 4, okay, already the difference between these two values, right, is like 5 point something or 4 point something, okay? So that's not gonna give us the smallest range, okay? So that's basically how you can also just think about this logically, okay? And then from here we'll see that, okay, between the imports and the exports for Japan, we have the smallest difference between these two values. So therefore, the smallest range between the imports and the exports, right, is Japan. Okay, the country that will give us the smallest range between the imports and the exports to Brazil is Japan. Okay, so that is how you can think about it, like mathematically. Just think of maximum minus minimum. Okay, and whatever value that you get that is the smallest, that is the country that has the smallest range. Okay, or you can just think which country, right, basically has the smallest difference between the imports and the exports, okay? And then from there, you can just think about it, okay, there, that's like 31. So obviously it's not that one. This one is like 8, right? So it's not that one. So this one is like 5. So it's not that one. This one is like, okay, this one is like 0.0.27. So you'd really probably be comparing it between this value and that value, okay? If you can't really pinpoint, but you'd see that actually probably between Argentina and Japan, I'll get the smallest range between the imports and exports. And then from there, you can even just use your calculator. What is 8.49 minus 8.22? You'll get 0.27. Okay. So from there, what is 4.32 minus 4.13, you'll get 1.9. You'll get 0.19. So therefore, the smallest difference, or the country with the smallest range, okay, between the imports and exports to Brazil is Japan. Okay, so that's just two ways in which you can basically think about approaching or answering this question. So the country with the smallest range between the imports and the exports is Japan. All right, let's have a look at the next question. Question 5.2.2, it says, identify the weakest currency against the Brazilian real. Okay, so we see here, right? Obviously, to answer this question, we will basically have to look at table number 6, right? And we're going to be focusing on the column that deals with the exchange rates, okay? Because these exchange rates basically tell you that, okay, if you have one Brazil, okay, these basically tell us that if you have $1, you are going to basically get 4.9642 Brazilian reals. If you have €1, that is basically going to give you 5.2379 Brazilian reals. So now we need to determine if you have R1, how many Brazilian reals will that actually give us? Okay, because here we already see that this is written as 1 Brazilian real is equal to 3 rand and 2026 cents. Okay, but then I think it would be advisable to also think of it as, if I have 1 rand, how many Brazilian reals will that give me? Okay, if you basically have that equation in that form, that will help you see which currency is actually the weakest. Okay, and basically what we will be looking at is that the currency that will actually give you the smallest, the lowest Brazilian reals is the weaker currency, because that basically means that, okay, if you basically have that currency, right, you will have the less amount of Brazilian reals. But let's actually put this into perspective. What do I actually mean by this? Okay, so basically we are given, okay, we are told that if you have $1, right, that basically means that you have 4.9642 Brazilian reals. Okay, also we were told that if you have €1, okay, that basically means you have 5.2379 Brazilian reals, right? But for the rand, do you see that for the rands here, right? We were told that if you have 1 Brazilian real, you will have 3.2026 rands. Okay, we were told that if you have one Brazilian real, okay, that basically means that you have 3.2026 rands. Okay, but then I'm just saying that, how about we write it as, if you have 1 rand, how many Brazilian reals do we have? So that then we will be able to actually compare these currencies properly. Okay, so how can we then now change this equation from 1 Brazilian reals is equal to 3.2026 rands to 1 rand is equal to something Brazilian reals? How can we convert it, or how can we basically convert this equation into this form? Okay, so all that we can do now, we can basically just divide both sides by 3.2026. We're just dividing by 3.2026. If you do that on the right hand side, you also need to do that on the left hand side. We're going to divide by 3.2026. Please note, I'm not dividing by that R. Do you see that? Because we're not trying to cancel out that unit on the right hand side, but it will make sense. Just follow, right? So if you basically take 3.2026 divided by 3.2026, what do you get? You get 1. Okay, so that is 1 rand is equal to, if you take 1 and you divide by 3.2026, what do you get? Okay, you will basically get 0.3122462999. Okay, so then do you see that now we can actually write this equation as 1 rand? Now we can actually write this as, therefore 1 rand is equal to how many Brazilian reals? 0.3122. I'm just gonna basically leave it in 4 decimal places, because all of these currencies here are basically written in 4 decimal places. Okay, so I'm just basically going to leave it in 4 decimal places. So it's 3122. Okay, so what does that tell us? Okay, so now we're just going to be focusing on what we have here, right? Okay, to determine which currency basically gives us the less Brazilian reals. Okay, so we can see that if you have $1, you will basically have 4.9642 Brazilian reals. If you have 1 euro, you will basically have 5.2379 Brazilian reals. If you have 1 rand, you will basically have 0.3122 Brazilian reals. Okay, so therefore, what can we conclude? We can therefore conclude that actually the rand is what? The weaker or the weakest currency. Okay, so therefore we can conclude that the South African rand is the weakest currency. Okay, cool stuff. Let us have a look at the next question. Question 5.2.3. Okay, question 5.2.3 basically asks us to calculate the exchange rate between the euro, right, and the South African rand in the form of, okay, 1 euro. 1 euro is equal to what rands? Okay, so we basically want to determine what is the exchange rate from euros to rands. Okay, as you can see here from this table, right, everything that is given to us, right, basically gives us the exchange rate, right, from dollars to the Brazilian real, from the Brazilian real to the rand, from the euro to the Brazilian real. But it doesn't basically tell us how you'd basically convert from the euro to the rand. Okay, so we want to get to a point where we are able to say that, okay, 1 euro is equal to something rands. Okay, so how will we basically get to this exchange rate, okay, between the euro and the rand? Okay, so here, guys, you basically need to pay attention. Okay, we need to find from these exchange rates that are given to us. Okay, look at exchange rates that basically deal with the euro, okay, and exchange rates that basically deal with the rands, okay, and those two exchange rates, those two formulas are what's gonna help us get to this 1 euro is equal to something rands. Okay, so which formula deals with the euros? We're going to be focusing on this one. Which formula deals with the rands? We're going to be focusing on that one. Okay, I'm going to write these two formulas on the next page. Okay, so already I'm just going to write it on the side. We already know that, okay, from these exchange rates that are given to us in table 6, right, we know that 1 euro is equal to 5.2379 Brazilian reals. Okay, the other formula or the other exchange rates, okay, that we're going to be focusing on is that one that deals with your rands. Okay, and it said that 1 Brazilian real, okay, is equal to 3.2026 rands. Okay, so these are the two exchange rates that are going to help us get to what we are looking for. Okay, and then we already know that we want our equation to start off with 1 euro. Okay, so we're going to be focusing, we're actually going to start our equation or start our solution with writing the equation where we've got the euro on the left hand side. Okay, so we're gonna have euro is equal to 5.2379 Brazilian reals. Okay, so we're gonna write down that equation. We're gonna start off with that equation where we write 1 euro is equal to 5.2379 Brazilian reals. Okay, then we're gonna focus now on the other exchange rates, okay, that we have basically written down here, okay, that talks about 1 Brazilian real is equal to 3.2026 rands. Okay, and with this equation we're going to multiply by what we want and we're going to divide by what we have. Okay, so that we basically have our units on the right hand side in rands. Okay, so what do we want? Okay, we want our units in rands, so we're gonna multiply by what we want. So we're gonna multiply by what we want. We want to have our units on the right hand side in rands, So we're going to multiply it by 3.2026 rands, and you're going to divide by what you have. What do we have here already? We've got units in Brazilian reals. So we're going to divide it by what we have, okay? So we're going to divide that by what we have, which is 1 Brazilian, okay? What do you notice is happening now, okay? What we notice is happening is that now, okay, the units for the Brazilian real and the Brazilian real cancel. Do you see that? And whatever answer you'll have on your right-hand side will be in units of rands, okay? So therefore, 1 euro, okay, is equal to, if we take 5.2379 multiplied by 3.2026, what do you get? Okay, you get 1 euro is actually equal to 16.77489854. All right, so then this is basically approximately equal to 1 euro is equal to, because our exchange rates are in 4 decimal places, right? That means that we need to basically round this value off to 4 decimal places because they actually weren't really specific. So we can just think, okay, in this case, we see that all these currencies, okay, have 4 decimal places, 4 decimal places, 4 decimal places, okay. So that basically means that we also need to also just round this value off to 4 decimal places, okay. So therefore, it will be 16.774. Okay, if you want to round it off to 4 decimal places, we're going to look at the 5th digit after the comma. And because this 5th digit is greater than 5, it tells us that we basically need to take that value 8 up by 1 unit. So it's going to be 4.9. Okay, so therefore, do you see that we've now answered the question? We've basically written 1 euro is equal to what? 1 euro is equal to 16.7749 rands. Okay, nice and easy. Just going to repeat what we did here. Okay, we already know that they want us to basically convert, or they want us to basically determine what is the exchange rate, okay, from euros to rands, okay? So that basically means that now what's going to help us is that we need to look at the exchange rate table, and we need to focus on the two exchange rate formulas that talk about a euro and that talk about a rand, okay? Rands, and I basically highlighted one that basically contains rands, and I highlighted another one that contains euros, okay? Then the next thing that we see is that, okay, we want to have euros on the left-hand side, okay? So that basically helps us determine which equation are we going to start off with, okay? So in this case, we're going to start off with this equation of 1 euro is equal to 5.2379 Brazilian rands, because already here in this equation, we've got the euro on the left-hand side, okay? And then from there, once we've written that equation, that's when now we apply that method that I always emphasize on all my video tutorials. When you're doing conversions, right? When you're doing percentages, you multiply by what you want, you divide by what you have, okay? But what equation are we going to use to multiply by what we want and divide by what we have? We're going to use the other equation that we have, where we are basically given that 1 Brazilian real is equal to 3.2026 rands, okay? And in this case, we're going to multiply by what we want. What do we want? We actually want the currency in what? In rands. So that is why we multiplied by 3.2026, divide by what we have. What do we have? What was already there in the equation that we had written down? We had our units in Brazilian reals. So we divide by Brazilian reals. How will you know that you actually are doing the right thing? The units need to cancel, okay? Meaning that the final answer should only be in the units that you actually want, which is rands. That is how you will know whether you're actually doing the correct thing, okay? Then from there, it becomes super easy. We just punch it into our calculator. We got this as our final answer, all right? And then from there, I basically decided that I can actually just round this off to 4 decimal places, because we saw that all these exchange rates, okay, were basically written or had 4 decimal places. All right. So I hope that was nice and I explained that nicely for you guys. All right. So let's have a look at question 5.2.4. It says Ludwig, a German citizen, stated that the difference between the United States imports and exports to Brazil is more than 7,600 million euros. Okay, we need to verify showing all calculations whether Ludwig's statement is valid. Okay, so I'm just gonna erase everything that we have on this page so that we basically focus our attention on what the question is basically asking us. Okay, so Ludwig is a German citizen, right? So we can basically say that he states that, okay, the difference between the United States imports and exports to Brazil is more than 7,600 million euros. Okay, so this question is actually telling us exactly what we need to do to start off our solutions. Okay, Ludwig is basically saying that the difference, okay, between the United, I'm just gonna say USA, imports. Okay, when we're talking about difference, we know that we want to subtract these two values. Okay, imports and exports, right, is more than 7,600 million euros. So we want to basically verify whether this statement is correct. Okay, so we already have our starting point. Okay, how are we going to start off this equation? By determining what is actually the difference, okay, in between the United States imports and exports to Brazil. Okay, so that basically means that we're going to focus our attention on the United States of America. Okay, we're going to look at what the imports were, we're going to look at what the exports are, and we are going to find the difference between the two. Okay, so what is the difference between the imports and the exports? Please note that these values represent billions of what? US dollars. Okay, so have that in mind. Okay, we want to basically confirm something that is in million euros. Okay, so we see that whatever answer that we're gonna get after we've basically determined the difference, right, we need to then convert that answer into euros, because the answer that we'll have will be in what? US dollars. Do you see that? Okay, but if you don't, it's fine. Let's take it step by step. Okay, so let's start off by finding what is the difference between the imports and the exports to Brazil. Let's find what is the difference between the United States imports and exports to Brazil. Okay, so let's basically do that. Okay, this is question 5.2.4. Okay, I'm gonna write it down. What is the difference? Okay, in the US imports minus US exports, okay, right? And we saw that, okay, what are the US imports? Okay, so the imports are actually equal to 29.72 what? Billions of US dollars. Okay, so it's going to be 29.72 billion, okay, US dollars, minus what is the exports? 2162 billion US dollars. Okay, 21.62 billion, okay, US dollars. Okay, if you punch these two values into your calculator, 29.72 minus 21.62, what do you get? Okay, you get 8.1 billion, okay, US dollars. Okay, however, right, the question basically wants us to basically verify whether his statement was correct. He said that the difference between the United States imports and exports to Brazil is more than 7,600 million euros. Okay, but we have our answer in dollars. Okay, so the first thing now that we want to do is we want to convert these dollars into euros. Okay, once we've basically converted these dollars into euros, then we'll have euros to euros to compare, right? We will be able to then say that, okay, therefore we saw that, okay, the difference is this amount, okay, therefore his statement is correct. But if one currency is in dollars and the other currency is in euros, we can't really compare. Okay, so that is why it's important that now at this step, after doing this, we need to convert this value that we have of 8.1 billion US dollars into euros. Once we've basically converted it into euros, we'll be able to then compare these two values and verify whether his statement was correct or not. Okay, so how can we convert these US dollars into euros? Okay, we're gonna be basically focusing on two equations. One equation that is given to us, right? Remember, we need to basically work with these